Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to HR Repair. This is Hey Ray. This evening it's a little late at night, but we're working on this Dodge Ram 2500. It's got the Cummins turbo diesel. Runs well. The problem we have is no fuel gauge. Customer stated that before the fuel gauge quit working, the dash went nuts, and he thought when he turned right we had the issue with the dash. So the dash quit acting up, but now we still have no fuel gauge. As we can see here, there is no fuel gauge. It stays on E and nothing. All right, so on this, and the reason I'm making this video is because there is very little to no information that I could find on this particular truck and the way this operates. So stay tuned and I'll show you what I found, and we'll go back through the diagnostic steps, and hopefully this will help you out, because this is kind of a rare problem that we found in this truck. So this should be pretty interesting, I think. I hope. Contact. All right, so first of all, what I've done is went online and went into service data, which is Identifix for me, and I've got a wiring diagram. And then I also printed off the flow chart for the code that we were getting. The code is P0462. That's the code we've got in our ECM. So one of the things that kind of got me with this is that if we come into here, fuel level sensor, so the code, when monitored, ignition on, battery voltage above 10.4 volts. The set condition is the signal voltage from the sensor falls below a calibrated value for a calibrated amount of time. So then it just goes zero, and you have no fuel gauge. Okay, fuel level sensor, turn the ignition off, disconnect the fuel level sensor harness connector, measure the resistance of the sensor across the N4 signal circuit and the return circuit. So that's going to be in your fuel level sending unit, or the module, fuel pump module, and that'll be these two center pins here. Okay, is the resistance less than 10 ohms? There's the first thing that we had wrong. So long story short, I put in a call to Identifix. I can request a call, give them the VIN number of this truck, tell them what it's doing. They'll call me, give me some pointers. I told them I went down this diagnostic troubleshooting chart here, and he said best thing to do with that, do that right there, because it's not right. He said none of their diagnostic work is correct, and he said a lot of their wiring diagrams are not correct. Now I think the one that I've got here is correct, so we're going to kind of try to explain it. It's not 100% the way it actually is, but the way he described it to me and what we have found, this will lead into what we've found, is that the dash sends out a ground signal, which we knew that it did, or we knew it had a ground. So what can happen is the dash cluster here's the cluster. So the cluster sends out a ground to the fuel pump module, and then has a resistor, a variable resistor. It's called a, there's a word for it. I can't even think of it right now, but basically as your float goes up and your float goes down, the resistance varies according to that, and that's what the cluster uses to tell us what our fuel gauge should be. Now, the way this works is the cluster sends out a ground, sends out a power voltage, out to the fuel pump module. The resistance in the fuel pump level sending unit varies with where the fuel is at, so that will vary the ground circuit. If I get it said right, it will vary the resistance to the ground. So what can happen in these clusters is that you lose a ground signal coming from the cluster. So what we did is we went ahead and provided a ground coming from the cluster. You can do that if your ground is going away. So I just went ahead and added a ground temporarily to this circuit right here, and nothing, same thing. Because going back, one of our first steps were to check the resistance across 2 and 3 in the fuel pump module, which is these two center ones. That should be anywhere from 200 and I think 250 0.0 ohms to down to, I think when the tank is full, it should be around 21 point some odd ohms. So we are at 52 ohms across these two, and I will go ahead and show you all of that, but I'm trying to explain it to you, and I know I'm kind of scattering around here, so I apologize. I hope that this is making sense. But so what the cluster does, it sends out a, I've already told you, it sends out a ground, it sends out a power. The resistance to the ground changes the feedback circuit here on the power. Then the cluster reports back to the ECM. So the cluster is reporting to the ECM that we have a short in this circuit right here. P0462 is a fuel level sensor signal low. So in theory, to test that real quick, if we come into the fuel pump module here and unplug it, we should have a circuit high. So let's go ahead and do that. And like I said, I already know what we're going to find, but I want to go through this and show you guys what I found. So let's get set up. We'll unplug this and see what kind of codes we get. Okay, so if we come into live data in our ECM, we have fuel level sense voltage. This is our voltage returning back, and as we can see, this is max, or is low, 0.03. That's low. That's too low for what the ECM is seeing. It can't tell where the fuel level's at. That's out of range. So it goes to fuel level percent, goes to 72.2%. Okay, so here is where it threw me off, and kind of got me a little bit, you know, discombobulated. We have a P0462 fuel level sensor 1 circuit low. Okay, so let's come in underneath here, and this one here is actually a little easier to unplug because he has a fast fuel system installed, and our connector is going to be right here. So theoretically, if we unplug this, we should have a circuit high code. Okay, so let's come into live data. This one won't change until we reread the codes, but I want to show you what it does in live data. Live data, we have 4.98, still at 72.2% fuel level percent. So what's happening is the ECM doesn't like the reading it's getting from the computer, so default is 72.2%. This will throw you off if you don't know that, or it did me anyway. So fuel level sense voltage 4.98, that tells us that our voltage is the return signal is maxed out according to the dash reporting to the ECM. Okay, so now if we come back into trouble codes, we can see, if we reread the codes, that we now have a P0462 stored. P0463 is active, which means it's now high. We would expect that if we have a faulty fuel level sending unit. Okay, if you remember, I tested the fuel level sending unit, or I said that I did. So let's go ahead and I'll show you guys how I tested that. Just for video's sake. We know what we're going to find, but for video's sake, let's test it. Okay, so coming up here, we've got this unplugged. The female end is going to be our harness coming from the ECM, or excuse me, from the wiring harness. This is coming from our wiring harness. This is directly coming from, through another connection or two, is coming from our cluster. So the two pins that are coming for the fuel level sending unit are these two center ones here. Okay, so you have a power and a ground. I believe that's, I've got it wrong, sorry. This is a ground, the one to the right, the one to the left is a power. That is for your fuel pump. That runs the fuel pump. There is a fuel pump in this tank. However, this one is bypassed and they're using the fast lift pump here. So, alright, so we know that this is running, so we're not too concerned about that. We're concerned about the circuit for the fuel level sending unit. Now, we know that we have a good circuit up to here because we have a circuit high when we unplug it. As soon as we plug it in, we have a circuit low. So one would think that it's got to be here. Okay, so what we want to do is to verify this is these two center pins, check continuity across those two, and we should have a reading, like I said, in between, somewhere in between 21.0 ohms to 220.0 ohms of resistance across those two center pins. That makes sense? Ohms of resistance across there. So we did that. The other thing we want to make sure, you know, if you're checking this, and maybe you have a little bit of a different code, but one thing you do want to make sure is that you have a ground and you have power. When this is unplugged, you should have about 9 to 10 volts of power up to, I think it's it's one pin or the other. So one of the center pins here, I don't remember which one it is. So let's hook up my meter and I'll show you what I've got here. Okay, got my meter here. We're plugged in to the, as you can see, the two center pins. Okay, 9.96 volts. So we're sending voltage. We do have a ground. By testing it that way, we know we have a ground. Now, what we don't know is, do we have a good ground? So you can supply, you can test that several different ways, and I've got them hooked up backwards because this is actually, we've got a minus in front of our voltage there. So we know that where I've actually got the power, this is actually the ground right here. Okay, so do we have a good ground? So what I did is I tested that by shorting across here, putting a jumper between here and here, and we went back to our P0462. So we've got this unplugged. Now our 463 is active, which means that it's a high circuit. We would expect that, okay? So we plug this back in, and we've already tested our fuel level sensor. We've got 52.4 ohms of resistance. I know I didn't show that, but we do. So we're gonna go ahead, and we've got it plugged in. Let's go ahead and reread the codes. we've switched. Now we have a fuel level sensor low, active. So why is that? Okay, so I thought, well, maybe my readings are incorrect on my resistance going into the fuel level sending unit. I got myself a new fuel level sending unit, never dropped the tank, just plugged it in, and same thing. As soon as I plug it in, 0462 comes active, 463 goes into stored. What's going, and our resistance values were the same on both. So what is actually wrong with this truck? Well, we now know with the tests that we've done, this is the cluster sending the ground to the fuel pump module. So we know we've got a good ground because I tested that. We also know we have a good ground and good power because our circuit changes from high to low when you plug it in or unplug it, or even cross. If you put a jumper wire, unplug your fuel pump module, put a jumper wire in between these two circuits, it goes to a low circuit, which is what we would expect. Okay, so what have we got going on here? The only thing we've got going on here is our cluster is bad. So long story short, we've got a bad cluster because the cluster is, as soon as it sees any kind of resistance values, it just it throws a code that is low or high. This is what I suspected, and I did request a call back from Identifix. We verified that. I went over everything with him, and he's like, yep, you're correct. So feel pretty confident in recommending a new cluster for this truck. Now, you can't get these new anymore. They're not available. So what I do, I pull these clusters out, I send them into Circuit Board Medics, and they will rebuild this cluster for me. Standard comes with a 1-year warranty. You can buy up to 10 years of warranty, but it's an extra $150. So, but Circuit Board Medics, they've never treated me wrong. I've always had very good success with them. Not sponsored, but they are a good company to deal with. I've had 0 complaints. So we're gonna pull this dash out of here. We're gonna send it off, and that should take care of our problem. So I'll bring you guys along. We'll pull this dash out. This is where I've come to. Oh, by the way, 223,639 miles. This is where I've come to. The problem with this is, what I showed you guys is like 20 minutes. It took me a day to get to this point. So, yeah, Chrysler, step up your game on wiring diagrams and your diagnostic flow charts. They suck. So let's get that dash pulled out, get it sent off, and that should take care of our problem. All right, so we're gonna pop this out of here. Obviously, he's got some added switches here. This is gonna make it a little bit more difficult, especially with this. Actually, this one here, I think we'll just unplug. So, yeah, it will. But we need to get this kick panel off of here. There's going to be a screw here and a screw right there, and then that kick panel will pop off of there. So we'll pop that off, and then we'll need to remove this part of the dash. So I'm going to get this kick panel removed, and then I'll bring you guys back. All right, so let's see if we can get this out of here. Let's go ahead, and this may take a fair amount of force here. It's not too bad. Okay, So what we need is we just need to move this to the side a little bit to be able to... Sorry, sir. I apologize. He's gonna have to put everything back in there. I apologize. Okay, let's get these two out of here. These are 7mm, by the way. These are 7mm, and the ones coming up from the bottom on the kick panel are 7mm as well. So let's drop them, I guess. I see it. It's down there. Got him. Got him! I went fishing today. All right, let's come over here. We've got two of them over here on this side. Okay, now on some, I don't know if it's on these. I'll put this up here. But on some of these trucks, you're not able to use them with the dash removed. And I do want this truck to be outside while the dash is getting repaired, because I don't have enough space in my shop. So let's go ahead and plug this back here. That just pops out like that. Not a biggie. Hopefully you guys seen everything there. All right, so there's going to be... What I did here is pull the shifter all the way down into one. We're going to have about 4 of these screws here as well. Holding this in, 7mm again. It's relatively easy to get all of these out of here. Okay, so there we go. Now, I don't know if I can operate this truck. We got to pull this all the way down. That's down. I don't know if I can operate this truck with the dash removed. So this might be a little bit of trial and error here. Maybe mostly error, I'm not sure. I know that there was a Ford that I couldn't operate with the dash removed. So the GMs, a lot of the GMs you can. Okay. Do I have still some more? I do. There's 3 plug-ins back here. Now, on a lot of these dashes, you will want to record your mileage, because Circuit Board Medics is going to want it. Come on. Alright. There it is. The next question is, can I start and run this truck without the dash installed? I cannot. So we will have to plug the dash back in. We'll pull it outside and remove it again. So, now that you know how this comes out, I will end the video here until we get the new dash, or the rebuilt dash.
364 days later.
Alright, so we're back on this Ram, and we got the dash back in. I had to do that because it is 10 degrees outside. I had to put it in outside because I can't drive it in without the dash. So I didn't even record it because I was cold, and I didn't want to take you guys out in the cold and get you guys all cold too. So I went ahead and plugged it in. Now we have an issue. What we have here is we've got a fuel gauge that works. However, if you look, our battery gauge is Well, let's just say it's off. You start the truck and it'll go all the way over to 18 volts. Now, we can see that that's not the case with our DVOM. It's 15. Maybe a little bit high, but that's not too bad. So we're off by 3 volts. So I've already talked to circuit board medics about this, and they have told me what I suspected happened is that there was a problem during shipping and it knocked the gauge out of calibration. So we need to calibrate it. They have sent me a calibration, manual gauge calibration. So we unplug the cluster from the vehicle, remove all 8 perimeter screws holding the lens on. We'll need to remove one of the warranty stickers on the bottom of the lens to access the needles. They've made note of this. It won't void the warranty. Plug the cluster into the vehicle, turn the key to the on position. When the cluster is plugged in and the vehicle is on, all of the gauges will automatically set to 0. Stick the needle in exactly at the 0 mark, leaving a very small gap between the needle and the whatever. Unplug the cluster and reinstall the lens, reinstall the cluster, we're good to go. So, very simple. I honestly think that that's actually going to be too far if I move it to 0. Because I think it's with the gauge, with the key turned on, I think we're going to be way off then. So we'll work with it because yeah, I think we're going to modify this a little bit, but we'll try it. So let's get this thing pulled out. We will remove our lens and then get this plugged back in. All right, so what we need to remove is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Get that removed, then we'll plug it back in. We'll set our gauge, unplug it, put it all back together. We'll be good to go. And just FYI, there is no warranty tab on this one. Usually there's a piece of warranty tape across there. Uh-oh. Somebody didn't do something right. Alright, so these here, I just pull this thing off, and then when it started, when the truck started again, we put the gauge where we want it. So now let's go ahead and start it. So we can see it goes up to about where it's supposed to be at. As soon as the alternator starts charging, we have around 14 to 15 volts. So perfect. That's where we want it. I'm good with that. All right, so our battery gauge seems to be working fine. And we have hooked up and we have scanned for codes. P0462 and 3 are both in stored. So we have repaired what we came to repair. Let us clear the codes, take it out on a drive, and see what happens. Typical Chrysler, it has to make noise every time we do something. All right, everything has went into pass, no fault. We're just gonna leave this thing hooked up and go on a drive and make sure that everything works. All right, we're gonna take this thing on a test drive, and so let's get moving on down the road here. We can see we do have a fuel gauge. Our voltage gauge is still working perfectly. Voltmeter, voltage gauge, whatever, same thing. So let's get down the road here and we'll test drive this thing, just make sure none of the codes come back, everything continues to work properly the way it should, I can't put my seatbelt on because that buckle does not work. I've tried. It goes in and back out. It never locks into place. So we got a very nice sounding Cummins up here in this truck. I don't know if you guys can hear that. It's the sound of freedom. I love me some turbos. And I love the way a Cummins sounds. Although I am a Duramax fan, I do love the way a Cummins sounds. Everything seems to work okay. We've went into overdrive, so I'm not going to bore you guys with any more. This is working. The fuel gauge is working. Temperature gauge is working. Oil pressure is working. Speedometer is working. Everything's working. Let's get this truck back. Let's call this another win. And I want to thank Circuit Board Medics for helping me out on this thing. They have been extremely helpful. Always have been. That I've been doing work for them. And no, I am not sponsored by Circuit Board Medics. However, if you want your dash repaired, they are a high quality place to get those repaired. They have good communication, good service, and most of all, they are based in the US of A. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. Until the next time, I'll catch you all later. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Bye!